So I'm going to talk about how to set up the deadlift properly. Now these principles are going to go for both conventional and sumo. So if you want to see the individual differences, then check out my conventional and sumo deadlift videos. So with this one, we're going to start with feet, where we're going to place our feet. So whenever you place your feet for a deadlift, whether it's conventional or sumo, it's going to be over your midfoot. Now as you go like a little bit wider with sumo, your shins might get a little bit closer to the bar. However, the principle is still going to be the same, where it wants to be relatively over your midfoot. And so if you're wearing shoes, it's roughly like your third row of shoelaces. The other way to kind of figure out where your feet should go is when you go down for the deadlift, start with your shins close to like right up against the bar, and then as you set up for the deadlift and the bar rolls forward, don't deadlift from there, but that's where the bar is going to want to sit whenever you actually set up for the deadlift. That's where it's going to naturally move. So you can allow it to roll forward, but after that first time of setting up with the shins right up against the bar and then letting that bar roll forward, see where that bar ends up over your foot and line up from that spot on your foot every single time. Okay, so we never have to put up our shins against the bar ever again. So that's how we're going to set up our feet. Now, the next part of this is we're going to think about the arms. So with the arms, we want them as long as possible whenever we're doing a deadlift. The reason we want our arms as long as possible is because the longer our arms are, the less range of motion that we have to go. But the other part of that too is if we're setting up and there's tension in our arms, say we're trying to squeeze our shoulder blades back, then the first motion is our arms getting long anyways. So that's going to end up killing a lot of power in our deadlift. So start with your arms as long as possible. So we're going long, setting up and getting tight against the bar with those arms long. Now, we're still getting tension in the lats, and you'll hear people say break the bar when you get to get tension in your lats to try to get that part engaged. However, I feel it's going to naturally happen whenever you're pushing your arms down. Your lats are going to have to engage whenever you brace your core and keep everything tight. And you can even just kind of feel that, like pushing your arms down, you're kind of feeling your lats engage. So just get your arms long. Don't think about trying to break the bar, because then that leads to people trying to squeeze their shoulders back, and we want arms long. Now with leg drive, I'll talk about wedge and leg drive. So with the wedge and the leg drive in the deadlift, sorry, I have my mouthpiece with me. I'm kind of like mid-set of my deload week. So whenever we're talking about leg drive, and wedging the bar, it kind of goes hand in hand with our arms being long. So we're getting everything set up, and we're bringing our hips up, and we're going to wedge our hips down, pushing our shins to the bar. But as you're doing that, you're starting up here, and we're pushing those feet down as hard as we can, almost like a leg press. So we're pushing down, getting tension all through our legs, and that's going to help us to keep from over wedging. We don't want to just drop our hips and then try to stand up, because a lot of times what you'll find is the slack isn't fully out of the bar yet, or your legs aren't fully engaged. And so what a lot of times will happen is when you just drop your hips down, hips shoot up, and then you stand up and it ends up coming from all that lower back. So when you set up, we're pushing those feet down as hard as possible, lifting that chest up, getting those hips wedged in, and all that tension is going to keep you from over wedging, and that it's going to feel like that bar wants to jump off the ground. And practice this on your warm-up sets, because even on your warm-up sets, the bar is going to want to jump off the ground. In fact, you will even probably pull it kind of to your mid shins whenever you're setting up, and that's okay. Go through that whole setup, even if the bar is already coming off the ground, get everything set, get all that tension in, and then drive off the floor. Now, part of the reason for all of that is to get the slack pull. Now, if you're working out at a public gym you'll probably have a stiff bar. But whenever you go to a deadlift bar, it's thinner, it's longer, but you're going to notice it's got a lot of bend to it. So, look, if you see the weights aren't moving, but the bar is bending up. That's the slack pull. If you don't get that slack out, then whenever you start to deadlift, that whip in the bar is going to pull you forward. And so getting all the tension in our body also gets all the tension out of the bar and allows us to actually lift the bar. And the reason for the whip, in some of these deadlift bars is because it's going to allow us to lift more. It's going to allow us to wedge in tighter. And so sometimes, the bar is starting here, but it might end up here whenever I'm actually ready to pull and engage. Especially the heavier you go, the more of a whip that bar is going to get. The heavier you go and the further out to the ends of the bar it goes, the more whip it's going to get. Okay, so that's everything from getting the arms long, lat engagement, foot placement, slack pull, and leg drive. That's everything that we want to get in this bar. The other thing we want to talk about is the brace. So I have my belt on. Whenever we think of a belt, putting our belt on for the deadlift, we want to make sure that when that belt is clasped, our two fingers can fit in between our stomach and our belt. The reason being is because we want to expand our stomach out to the belt, out to the sides, because that's going to create that bracing effect in our back and our core. And it's going to make everything nice and stable. If we can get the belt as tight as possible and kind of crank that on, it almost makes it hard, creates kind of like a false tightness in our core. And what you end up finding is then not everything is fully engaged in the core and in the back. And so you're going to find some limitations in your power output. And so we want to make sure that the belt's not too tight. And whenever we're bracing, we're not bracing to the chest. We're not, and then getting tight and then going down for the brace. What we're actually doing is we're pushing out to the sides of the belt, getting nice and tight in that belt, and then going down for the deadlift. So it's not here, it's here, out to the sides. Okay, so I'm going to go through the whole movement of the deadlift. And so we're going a little bit heavy so that you guys can see where the slack pull is coming from. So my feet are placed, my arms are as long as possible. We're clasping the belt. We're just going to start bracing, coming down, arms long, engage those legs. And that's how to set up a deadlift.